Well, Dr. Ben Carson burst onto the political scene after rousing the crowd at this year's National Prayer Breakfast and last week at CPAC, and he gave no signs of slowing down.
If we continue to spin ourselves into oblivion, we are going to destroy our nation. If I were trying to destroy this nation, if you just, let's say you magically put me, into the White House, and...
So why is he all of a sudden making waves, and why did they cheer? Joining us right now is world-renowned pediatric neurosurgeon Dr. Benjamin Carson. He's also the best-selling author of the book called America the Beautiful. Dr. Carson, welcome back.
Thank you.
Dr. Carson, can I just say I watched your speech, and then I watched the way all the networks handle it. No one can really understand where you came from and why you seem so comfortable behind the microphone in the spotlight. Have you pre-thought this moment in your life and your career?
No, I haven't, but my philosophy is always tell the truth, and you don't have an agenda. Just be yourself and be natural, and then you don't have to pose like you're doing something different.
Oh, you're talking about how politicians pose. I know what you're up to. Of course, you burst onto the scene at the National Prayer Breakfast where you had some rather sharp words for the president, and then you were at CPAC this past weekend. Rush Limbaugh, I don't know if you're familiar with this, said that right now, Dr. Carson, you've got Democrats terrified. Here's a little Rush.
I think Dr. Benjamin Carson probably got everybody in the Democrat Party scared to death. It's going to be really hard to demonize this guy. Really, really hard. Partially because of his race, but not just because he's African American. It's because you can call this guy all kinds of demonic names. He just doesn't fit the bill.
Well, Dr. Carson, is Rush right?
Well, I certainly hope so. I've tried to lead the right kind of life, a life that is inspired by my love of God and my love of my fellow man. And, it is very difficult to demonize someone under those circumstances. But, I don't think it's just Democrats. Republicans have been involved, too, in deceit and in trying to rule by fear. And I think any politician who is doing that, I'm very happy to expose them. More importantly, I think we need to offer solutions for the problems, not just complain.
Dr. Carson, Rush Limbaugh also went on to say something else about you. He said, Dr. Carson is able to articulate and explain conservatism in a way that is persuasive without raising his voice at all. Do you ever raise your voice?
Well, that probably comes from my training as a neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
Neurosurgeons tend to be very calm under fire. They have to be because you deal with some pretty stressful situations.
Dr. Carson, when will you decide if you're going to get into the political fray? As you mentioned, it's not brain surgery.
Well, it's not something that is at the top of my agenda. My agenda is to encourage discussion, encourage openness, and hopefully get to a point where we stop getting into corners and firing at each other and acting like third graders. If God has other plans for me, he certainly will manifest those, but I don't expect that to happen anytime in the near future. It's a long time before the next election.
It is a long time before the next election, but I think you're going to be retiring one of these days, and so it is curious, why are you coming out and speaking so loudly right now?
Because I was invited. It was not part of my master plan, but quite coincidentally, toward the end of my career, I'm asked to give this talk. The platform was there, and that's what happened. Sometimes things happen that you don't control.
Has a political strategist spoken to you, somebody that you might want to work with?
I've had so many people speaking to me, it's unbelievable. but the ones that I really appreciate actually are fellow Americans who are sending me all kinds of great ideals about how things should be done. If our politicians were really smart, they would create a forum whereby they could really listen to some of these people. They're very, very smart, but they don't want to get into the political fray themselves because they know how brutal it is.
Well, Dr. Ben Carson, always great to talk to you. We're counting down the days to your retirement, as we know you are. It's about 130 now. So, thanks.
How about 102?
Oh, 102. Got it. I'll change the calendar. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you very much.
He is coming out and speaking a lot, but it's always quietly.
Yes.
Indeed.